Hello, my name is Rolf Meyer. I work as a software developer for Fabasoft in Linz. I'm a member of the team Fabasoft app.ducx, and today I want to show you how to get started with app.ducx and initially create your first project. So we prepared everything that we need in advance. Here we have our Eclipse installation directory, and I'll start by double-clicking the Eclipse icon to bring up my Eclipse installation. The first thing that Eclipse asks me is where I want to place my workspace. I'll just select the default setting and click OK. Now Eclipse is started up, and I can start working with Fabasoft app.ducx by creating a new project. For that, I'll select File, New Project, and from the wizard that pops up, I'll select Fabasoft app.ducx project. Clicking Next, I'll step into the first wizard page where I have to define the name for my new project. I'll take app.ducx sample as a name, and app.ducx automatically creates the reference for my software component out of that name. By convention, references of software components are written in uppercase and project names are written in lowercase. After clicking Next, app.ducx asks me which software components within my Fabasoft Folio installation I want to initially create as references. I'll just leave it with the default settings, as those components should be enough for the first projects. This wizard page allows me to select the name for my software component. You can use any character here, including whitespace and special characters. So I'll take Fabasoft app.ducx sample as the name and type any number as a version. Under copyright file, app.ducx wants me to select a text file that is being used as the copyright for my software component later on. Here I'll browse to my workspace folder and select the copyright file that I prepared before. After clicking Next, I could enable Java support for my project. This is the page where you would define some Java-specific settings if you wanted to use Java support in your app.ducx project. For now, we'll leave the checkbox for Java support unchecked and continue by clicking Next. The next wizard page allows us to initially create a project structure for Fabasoft app.ducx and allows you to create the first app.ducx files, or have the first app.ducx files created automatically. Here we get a good overview over the resource types that exist within Fabasoft app.ducx. Under Resources, we find two language-specific files, the so-called mlnames.language files. For now, we'll select the English language file to denote that we want to translate our software component only to English but not to German. Down here we can select any of the app.ducx resource types that we want to be initially created within our project. The first three types are called user interface files. For convenience, we suggest splitting the user interface model up into at least those three file types. The first one is called binding. That's where you would bind your user interface model aspects to your object model aspects. The next one is called forms.ducx. Within the forms file, you would define forms and menus for your object model, for your object classes. And within the portal.ducx file, you typically define portal pages for your software component. The next file type that app.ducx offers us to select are the so-called business process files. Within business process files, you define workflows and business process models of your software component. The customization files, which are next, are used as interfaces within Fabasoft Folio to allow different software components to interact with each other and use so-called customization points that other software components provide. The next file type is called the object model. That's where you define the static modeling aspects of your software component, like object classes, inheritance, attributes, structs, and things like that. The organizational structure file is used to define all aspects that are needed for organizational structures like user groups, positions, and roles within Fabasoft Folio. After that, you can select the next one is Fabasoft resource files. Resource files are used to define additional resources for your software component, like symbols or error message objects or string objects, which can be used for translating your software component into different languages. And the last file types are the so-called Fabasoft app.ducx use case files. Those files are used to implement the behavior or the logic of your software component. Within use case files, you can create so-called Fabasoft app.ducx expressions or virtual applications, which define the dynamic aspects of your software component. So every interaction logic with the user, for instance, is defined in the so-called use case files. For our sample, I'll select the object model file and click Finish to create my new project. So now you can see the user interface of Eclipse with the Fabasoft app.ducx plugin installed. On the top right of your screen, you see the Fabasoft app.ducx perspective. If the perspective is not selected or is not enabled at the moment, you can enable it by clicking this button, and under Other, you'll find the Fabasoft app.ducx perspective. Now on the left of your screen, you see the Project Explorer of Eclipse, which shows you all of your open projects. Currently we have one project, which is the app.ducx sample project we created before. And within the project we see the initial structure that Fabasoft app.ducx created for us. Here we see the object model file that we selected in the project new wizard to be automatically created. And we also see the copyright header that was inserted automatically. So that's the content of this copyright.txt file that I selected before. And this content is copied into all new source files automatically. After that we see the so-called object model block, which denotes the beginning of the Fabasoft app.ducx object model DSL. The import statements that you see here are used to reuse functionality of other software components. For now, we'll just leave it by importing a CEO system to reuse functionality of the Fabasoft Folio base system. Now within the object model file, we can create the static structure of our software component, like object classes, inheritance, attributes, and so on. I'll create a new object class called Hello World and make it a so-called common class, which means that users should be able to instantiate this class on their desk and in folders. Now before we can actually use the object class that we just created within Fabasoft Folio, we have to create a so-called run configuration in Eclipse. We do that by selecting the Run menu and clicking Run Configurations. Within this dialog, we create a new run configuration by clicking Fabasoft app.ducx and clicking the New button on the top left. Within this dialog, we select the project that we want to be run, which is in our case the app.ducx sample project that we just created. And by clicking Start Fabasoft Web Browser Client, we denote that we want a new instance of our web browser to be started automatically after the project is uploaded. Now after clicking Apply and Run, the software component is compiled and uploaded to Fabasoft Folio. You can follow the progress on the bottom right of your screen with this progress bar. After uploading is complete, our web browser client opened up and we have to log in. And now we're working within our Fabasoft Folio installation, and we can create a new instance of the object class that we created before in Fabasoft app.ducx. Here under the Create New Object wizard, we find the object class called Hello World. And by clicking Next and defining a name for the object, we can create an instance of our new object class. Have fun using Fabasoft app.ducx.